Tron Ares, directed by Joachim Roning, written by Jesse Ugoto, David DeGilo, and Steven Leisberger. Starring Jared Leto, Greta Lee, Evan Peters, Jodie Turner-Smith, Gillian Anderson, and making a return, Jeff Bridges. How do I say this? I went into this, I didn't have many expectations, to be honest. I just kind of wanted to see and go along for the ride. What this would have to offer and bring into the Tron verse. I wasn't particularly sold from the beginning. I figured if anything, the graphics might be good, the visuals could be great. And, unfortunately, I think that is essentially the highlight of this film. Even after seeing this, I rewatched Tron Legacy just the last night before making this. I saw the movie opening weekend, and it felt lacking in many ways, to the degree in which I wasn't quite sure, outside of an IP ploy, why this was done. It feels like to do this review, it's a comparison of just to Tron Legacy, everything that Tron Legacy was in terms of story, in terms of tone, in terms of world building, in terms of character, in terms of care, in terms of all those things. I feel like this wasn't that, and it's kind of a disappointment, really. It feels, this just became another one of those, Skynet can't be controlled by humans, like a program is kind of break free, and in a way that, for the sense of Tron, I feel like we kind of deserved more, needed more, wanted more, maybe? I don't know. I'm sure most people don't have experiences. I saw Tron Uprising, the animated series that's on Disney Plus, where that kind of, in a sense of leading you to what I would say is either pre-Tron Legacy or post, I can't remember, but in the sense of, like, you have this it's before, it's leading up to, it covers like the Purge and all of the ISOs and everything before Clue kind of gets to where he is now, and that's before Tron Legacy. This film, based on what it was doing, seemed like it should have been called Legacy, because it has so much to do with family and lineage and going back to the beginnings of Encom and Dillinger and all of these sort of things, and, like, who's grandfather and who's mother and whose parents and all. It seemed like, in a way, I'm like, should this have been called Legacy? Because that seems to be the focal point of all of this. What stems from what? The story to me just didn't seem, it didn't like have a focus as far as where exactly it wanted to take us. And, between this motion of permanence and this thing of, creating and bringing programs here, and just controlling the way. There seemed like a few ideas that could have worked, but there was too much going on in multiple directions. Ultimately, I found it odd that we were essentially saying that these gaming companies were really defense contract and armed companies, I guess, AI militaristic software companies that are moonlighting still as gaming companies, or that the gaming company profits have moved them over into the defense sector, private sector. I'm not sure. I feel like that would have been a greater angle to explore almost entirely, like how we got to this, to how these companies are that, and maybe Greta Lee's character in finding all this out, her and Ares cross paths, and this is now, you want to use this program and bring it to the real world to expose sort of all the nefarious activities and defense kind of contracts and stuff that's been happening behind the scenes. But apparently that's known to the world, that Encom, that these two gaming companies that are responsible for the highest grossing games of all time are actually defense program systems. I don't know. That didn't vibe with me. Also, there seems to be a sense of, somehow unexplored, they're able to create their animate objects from code, I guess, or the digital world, and it can exist here in our world. There are a lot of things that I was like, and that took me out. I'm like, oh, so we can make a product digitally, and now we just need to figure out how to make it last in this world. Another thing that I thought, in order for that to, that's a whole other can of worms. For that to exist, that means that are we saying that we're all made by code, and that somehow by tapping into the Tron verse that we are able to now be in this? So there's a lot of loopholes that did not work for me to try and bring Jared Leto's character, essentially this perfect defense system, this perfect defense program, who, with very little motivation, mind you, becomes not only sentient in the sort of tropey cliche way, but also develops a sense of empathy and care for essentially what I would view has never been entered into he should have no awareness of, and immediately begins to, that's how we get to him and Greta Lee, is somehow he cares for this character in a way that what they showed us, he's only meant to be a fighting program, a fighting machine. So another one of those things of just one person, the only person, shakes up this entire programming and entire existence of life in a way that now overrides his programming and causes him to deflect. And to that point, something that I found very disturbing, my brother and I, that we watched, was that Jodie Turner-Smith plays sort of the right hand. She's Athena to Jared Leto's Ares, and she becomes the all-encompassing, doting, sort of diligent, unquestioning program, which I don't particularly like to bring these kind of, politics into this, but being that she's essentially the only black character of note and full highlight in this movie, the fact that she essentially, and in the end, kind of meets her end by being the sort of dutiful, unquestioning, unyielding, sort of blunt instrument that doesn't rebel against sort of the master of the programming, even though she becomes master control, but she doesn't go against, her creator. I thought was an interesting take nowadays. I found that was, and maybe I'm reading into that, I don't know, but it just seemed very, I wasn't particularly a fan of that. That didn't sit well with me, that she being the only sort of black character was in this sort of tropey, strong black woman, this strong black character, right hand, always wanting her shot, and now will do any means necessary, and becomes the only in the movie, the only thing that is actually, like the T-1000, this sort of blunt and terrifying character in the story. I wasn't particularly a fan of that. Scoring wise, did not work for me. Again, when you compare, even if the tone of these movies is different, you compare how Daft Punk in every single theme of that soundtrack and that score fit and seemed perfect. It was seamless and flowed perfectly throughout Tron Legacy. I feel like the Nine Inch Nails sort of hard-nosed, crude, and quite frankly, one-note take of a soundtrack did not work for this. I mean, you had sort of these sweeping, visuals and scopes. I mean, something that could be viewed as almost therapeutic or at least like call to adventure. And when you have someone skiing or snowboarding down an all-white mountain face, and yet you're playing sort of these hard, really tingy and punchy kind of chords and notes, it did not seem to fit. Tonally, it was a bit all over the place in a way that did not service the story, and kind of left me like, you were very like, It was just it blipped me out to a degree. I was not a big fan of that. What else? This seemed the engine of this story was very odd to me, like trying to find this sort of program of permanence to allow for the AI to exist in our world. I get that, but yet there seemed to be a huge over-reliance on, again, this is why I feel like it should have been called Tron Legacy, because it felt way too concerned with every single callback, majority of punchlines, and Jared Leto's sort of entire makeup to be consumed with the 1980s culture in a way of like, it just seemed like it was all trying to go back to the original Tron, And when you watch it, there's an even more and direct on the nose sort of member berry of that in a way that I just was, again, I didn't quite understand. It just felt like it didn't want to acknowledge Tron Legacy, and the ways that it did, it was so lacking, and especially at the end, where you sort of figure there's a reference to Korra in a way that was very like head scratchy, eyebrow raising, like, what? So that's how we're gonna mention this character? Yeah, it felt too concerned with, which I would even gather who the demo for this would be, would have no recollection or no interest really in the original Tron movie from in the 80s. Like, I feel like if anything, they should have been piggybacking and targeting directly Tron Legacy and building on that. Speaking of which, the action scenes or any set pieces that took place on the grid, in this case, Dillinger's, red-themed nefarious grid, another very on the nose. The action didn't seem to be as inspired as in Tron Legacy. I feel like anything that was left on the cutting room floor from Tron Legacy was picked up here, and almost in a way that was like, yeah, that's why, because it was drawn out and not particularly that great. I mean, there is sort of this sort of, boating or speed water thing that I guess makes sense, but there was no wow moment. Like, I feel like in watching Tron Legacy again last night, there were so many just wows, like, wow, this is so innovative, like things that you wouldn't think about for Tron. Like, it was like, wow, this is like, yeah, like awe-inspiring, very, very that. And I really didn't get any of that here. Like the fight choreography, I didn't get it. I didn't get it here. And the thing about relaunching, and the thing about the time clock, and it seemed like it really was trying to milk the juice out of something that wasn't much. And for a 2-hour runtime, it honestly felt longer. I mean, it felt like 220 to me. So yeah, I don't know. And then the ending, it just seemed like an odd tack on to me. I mean, the mid-credit scene, that's cool. I get it. That's great. That actually was something I feel like you could have hung your hat on and just called it quits there. That could have wrapped it. But for the ending of it to be more of what could have been a Jared Leto tequila ad for something, seemed like a tacked on reshoots to almost suggest that he'll be coming back for another, another term, so another movie. Yeah, in the end, I don't know. It didn't do it for me. It honestly felt more flat than fulfilling. No good punchlines. This whole like, what do we go from here? But we'll see what happens is a punchline, or I guess we'll see. I don't know. It just was not. It didn't do it. So yeah, I mean, I can't say that I recommend it. It honestly, even in seeing it in IMAX, I guess for the scope of it, sure, it made for some entertaining moments. But in the end, I hate to say it, it could be a streaming situation if you have a large enough TV. But, all right, that's my review for this. Like and subscribe for more reviews, reactions to movies and trailers like this. And until next time, keep watching.